The barrel of the gun pressed against Emma's temple as tears streamed down her face. One wrong move from Mark, and his daughter's life would end in an instant. But instead of panic, the single father's eyes reflected something unexpected, a serene calculation that made even the armed CEO step back in confusion. "You have exactly 5 seconds to lower that weapon," Mark said, his voice steady as a surgeon's hand. "Or you'll regret ever walking into this building." What happened next would change both their lives forever. Emma Sullivan never expected to be a hostage on an ordinary Tuesday. The 26-year-old executive assistant with flowing blonde hair and striking features had simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time when Alexander Reeves, CEO of Pinnacle Investments, finally snapped under the pressure of his crumbling empire. Mark Taylor, a single father who had raised his daughter alone since his wife's death 8 years ago, was supposed to be presenting his revolutionary security software to Pinnacle's board that morning. Instead, he found himself walking into a hostage situation with his daughter caught in the middle. "I said don't move," Reeves shouted, his designer suit disheveled, his eyes wild with desperation. "Nobody leaves until the board transfers control back to me." Mark assessed the situation with the same methodical precision that had made his security firm successful. His athletic frame tensed beneath his tailored suit, but his expression remained impassive. Years of military training before becoming a tech entrepreneur had prepared him for crisis, but nothing prepared a father for seeing his child in danger. "Mr. Reeves," Mark said calmly, "I understand you're upset. But involving my daughter won't solve your problems." Emma's eyes met her father's across the boardroom. Despite her terror, she recognized that look. It was the same one he wore when facing impossible deadlines or when she'd been bullied in school. It was his problem-solving face. "You don't understand anything." Reeves spat, tightening his grip on Emma. "They're trying to push me out of my own company. Everything I've built." "Actually," Mark replied, setting his presentation folder on the table with deliberate slowness, "I understand better than you might think." What Mark did next would not only save his daughter but transform a desperate situation into an unexpected partnership that nobody saw coming. 3 hours earlier, Emma had been excitedly preparing for her father's presentation. At 18, she was spending her gap year working as his assistant before starting college. "Dad, are you nervous?" she asked, straightening his tie in the hotel room. Mark grinned, the smile transforming his serious face into something boyish despite the flecks of gray at his temples. "Me? Never. Though I might pretend to be if it gets me another pep talk." Emma rolled her eyes. "You're impossible." "Impossibly charming," he corrected, making her laugh. Their easy banter masked a deep bond forged through tragedy. After losing her mother to cancer when she was 10, Emma had watched her father rebuild their lives piece by painful piece. His security software company had started at their kitchen table during those dark days, a way to channel his grief into creating something that protected others. "This contract could change everything for us," Emma said more seriously. Mark squeezed her shoulder. "We're already everything we need to be, kiddo. This is just icing on the cake." Neither could have imagined that within hours, they'd be fighting for their lives against a man who had lost everything, including his grip on reality. If you're finding yourself on the edge of your seat, hit that like button and keep watching to see how this father's quick thinking changes everything. The Pinnacle Investments boardroom had the sterile elegance of old money, all mahogany and brass, overlooking the Manhattan skyline. When Mark and Emma arrived, they were greeted by Catherine Wells, the striking chief operations officer whose reputation for ruthless efficiency was matched only by her impeccable style. "Mr. Taylor," she said, extending a manicured hand. "We're looking forward to your presentation. Security has become our top priority given recent events." The meaningful glance she cast toward the CEO's empty chair told Mark everything he needed to know about the company's internal struggles. "Please, call me Mark," he replied, noticing how her professional demeanor softened slightly at his warm tone. "Catherine, then," she answered with the hint of a smile. "And this must be your assistant?" My daughter, Emma, Mark clarified proudly. Best decision-maker I know. Catherine's eyebrow arched with interest. A family business. How refreshing in this cutthroat world. Their introduction was interrupted by commotion at the door. Alexander Reeves burst in, looking nothing like the polished financial magazine's covers he'd graced for years. His tie was loosened, his eyes bloodshot. The meeting's cancelled, he announced to the stunned room. Catherine stepped forward. Alex, we have a schedule. I said it's cancelled, he shouted, then pulled something from his jacket that changed the temperature of the room instantly. The gun. What happened in the next 30 seconds would determine whether anyone walked out alive. Now, with Emma held at gunpoint and the board members frozen in terror, Mark's mind raced through scenarios with military precision. He needed to get Reeves talking, establish rapport, find the psychological leverage that might save his daughter's life. Your company means everything to you, Mark said, taking a careful step forward. I built mine from nothing too. After my wife died, it was all I had besides Emma. Reeves' hand trembled slightly. They're voting me out today. 30 years of my life, and they're throwing me away like garbage. Catherine spoke from where she stood with the other board members. Alex, that's not what. Shut up. Reeves shouted, his finger tightening on the trigger. Mark raised his hand. Mr. Reeves, Alexander, look at me, not her. This is between us now. Father to father. The CEO's eyes snapped to Mark's. I'm not a father. But you built something, Mark continued. You nurtured it, protected it, watched it grow. That's what fathers do. Emma remained perfectly still, her eyes never leaving her father's face. The trust there gave Mark strength. They don't understand what it takes, Reeves said, his voice cracking. The sacrifices. I do, Mark replied. Every late night. Every missed opportunity. Every moment wondering if you're doing the right thing. Something shifted in Reeves' expression, recognition, perhaps. A connection forming. The software I created, Mark continued, it started because I couldn't protect my wife from cancer. But I could build something to protect others. What did you build Pinnacle to protect, Alexander? The question hung in the air like suspended glass, fragile, dangerous, potentially transformative. What Reeves revealed next stunned everyone in the room and changed the course of the confrontation entirely. If you're invested in these characters' journey, make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens next in stories like these. My brother, Reeves whispered, his composure cracking. He lost everything in the '08 crash. Jumped from his penthouse while the banks that ruined him got bailouts. The boardroom was silent except for the CEO's ragged breathing. So I built Pinnacle to be different, he continued. Ethical investing. Supporting small businesses. Until these vultures, he gestured at the board with the gun, making everyone flinch, started pushing for higher returns at any cost. Catherine stepped forward despite the danger. Alex, that's not true. The vote today isn't to remove you. It's to support your original vision against the shareholders pushing for riskier investments. Confusion crossed Reeves' face. What? We were going to surprise you, she said. The presentation today, Mr. Taylor's security system, it's part of our plan to protect client data from the corporate raiders trying to access our ethical investment strategies. Mark saw his opening. Mr. Reeves, my software doesn't just protect data. It creates unbreakable authentication chains that prevent unauthorized trading. No one could ever use your platform for the kind of predatory practices that hurt your brother. Emma, still in Reeves' grip, spoke for the first time. My dad built it after a client's identity was stolen. He wanted to make sure no one else lost everything because of something preventable. The parallels were unmistakable. Reeves' grip on Emma loosened slightly. You've been working 80-hour weeks, missing board meetings, Catherine explained gently. We were trying to help, not push you out. The CEO's hand trembled. I found the meeting notes, contingency plans. For your health leave, Catherine finished. Your assistant was worried about you. We all were. Mark took another careful step forward. Alexander, I know what it's like to be so focused on protecting something that you can't see when you're the one putting it at risk. Their eyes met, two men who had channeled personal tragedy into purpose, now at a crossroads where violence or redemption hung in the balance. The next moment would determine everything. The gun lowered an inch. Then another. How do I know you're telling the truth? Reeves asked, his voice hollow. Mark nodded toward his presentation folder. May I? When Reeves nodded, Mark slowly opened the folder and turned it toward the CEO. Inside wasn't just software specifications but a complete proposal titled Ethical Investment Protection Protocol. This is what Catherine commissioned, Mark explained. A system that makes it impossible for anyone, board members, traders, even you, to violate the ethical investment principles you founded Pinnacle on. Emma felt Reeves' arm relax further. It would be your legacy, she said softly. Something that would protect people like your brother forever. The gun lowered completely. I've made a terrible mistake, Reeves whispered. Mark stepped forward and gently took the weapon. We all make mistakes, Alexander. It's what we do next that defines us. As security personnel finally entered the room, summoned by a silent alarm, Mark did something unexpected. Instead of backing away, he placed himself between Reeves and the armed guards. This man needs medical attention, not handcuffs, he stated firmly. And when he's better, Pinnacle will need his vision more than ever. Catherine moved to Mark's side. I agree. No charges. We handle this internally. The security team hesitated, looking between Catherine and the man who had just threatened the entire board. What happened next would not only change Pinnacle Investments forever but spark a revolution in corporate America that no one could have predicted. If this story of redemption and second chances resonates with you, please take a moment to like and share it with someone who might need to hear this message today. 6 months later, Mark and Emma stood in the same boardroom, but everything had changed. The Ethical Investment Protection Protocol had been implemented across Pinnacle's global operations, with Mark's company handling security and Reeves, after intensive therapy and a temporary leave, returning as Chief Ethics Officer rather than CEO. Catherine, now acting CEO, handed Mark a contract. Your security systems have transformed how we operate. We'd like to implement them across all our subsidiaries. Mark smiled. That's quite an expansion. Necessary growth, she replied, her professional tone warming as it always did around him. Their working relationship had evolved over the months into something neither had anticipated, a connection built on mutual respect that was increasingly difficult to define as merely professional. Emma noticed the lingering glance between them and suppressed a smile. Her father deserved happiness after so many years alone. Does this mean I get a raise? Emma joked, breaking the moment. Executive assistant to the security consultant for a global financial empire sounds like it deserves more than minimum wage. Mark laughed. You're leaving for college in 3 months, remember? About that, Emma said more seriously. I've been thinking of deferring another year. What we're doing here, it matters. More than freshman sociology. Before Mark could respond, the boardroom door opened and Alexander Reeves entered. The change in him was remarkable, the haunted look replaced by purpose, the desperate anger by calm resolve. The Thompson Foundation called, he announced. They want to feature our ethical investment model in their global initiative. They're saying what we've built here could change how Wall Street operates forever. Catherine smiled. They're right. Mark watched as his security software, born from personal tragedy, became part of something larger than he'd ever imagined, a shield not just against data breaches but against the kind of corporate greed that destroyed lives. We couldn't have done this without you, Catherine told Mark, her hand briefly touching his. Or without Emma, Reeves added. Your daughter's perspective during implementation was invaluable. Mark felt a surge of pride mixed with bittersweet awareness. His little girl had grown into a remarkable woman, one who might soon follow her own path away from him. As if reading his thoughts, Emma linked her arm through his. Don't worry, Dad. Whatever I decide about college, we're still a team. The moment was interrupted by Catherine's assistant announcing their next meeting. As the others filed out, Catherine hung back. Dinner tonight? She asked Mark quietly. To celebrate the contract? The question carried weight beyond professional courtesy. Mark hesitated, then nodded. I'd like that. As they left the boardroom, Mark reflected on how a moment of terrible danger had somehow led to this new beginning, for Pinnacle, for Reeves, and perhaps for himself as well. Sometimes the most unexpected circumstances led to the most meaningful connections. And sometimes, it took facing your worst fear to find your greatest strength. That day in the boardroom had changed everything. When Mark had stepped between Reeves and the security team, he hadn't just saved a desperate man from prison, he'd demonstrated the same principles his security software was built on, that protection wasn't just about keeping bad things out, but about preserving what was valuable within. Now, as Mark watched Emma chatting animatedly with Catherine and Reeves about implementation strategies for smaller markets, he realized that the family business had grown in ways he never anticipated. Not just in contracts and clients, but in purpose and people. The single father who had walked into Pinnacle Investments that fateful day had been focused on securing his daughter's future. He couldn't have known that his calm in crisis would not only save lives but create a ripple effect transforming an entire industry. You know, Catherine said, joining him by the window overlooking the city, when you faced down a desperate man with a gun, I thought you were either the bravest or the craziest person I'd ever met. Mark smiled. Probably a bit of both. What made you so calm? She asked. Most people would have panicked seeing their child in danger. Mark watched Emma across the room, confident and compassionate as she explained a technical point to a board member. I learned long ago that panic doesn't solve problems, he said quietly. When my wife was diagnosed, when treatments failed, when I became a single parent overnight, falling apart was never an option. Catherine's hand found his, a gesture that had become familiar over the months. Your daughter is extraordinary, she said. She has your strength. And her mother's heart, Mark added. The perfect combination. As the meeting concluded and they prepared to leave, Reeves approached Mark one last time. I never properly thanked you, the former CEO said. Not just for what you did that day, but for showing me there was a way forward. Mark shook his hand firmly. Sometimes we all need someone to remind us what we're fighting for. As they left Pinnacle's offices that evening, Mark, Emma, and Catherine heading to dinner to celebrate their new contract, Emma turned to her father with a knowing smile. Mom would approve, you know, she said, nodding subtly toward Catherine walking ahead of them. Mark felt a moment of surprise, then gratitude for his perceptive daughter. You think so? She always said your heart was too big to stay closed forever, Emma replied. And she was right about everything else. The future stretched before them, uncertain as always, but full of possibility. From a moment of terrible danger had come unexpected connection, renewed purpose, and the chance to create something meaningful together. And isn't that, in the end, what truly matters? Not the crises we face, but how we respond to them. Not the losses that shape us, but the love we choose to give anyway. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need a reminder that even our darkest moments can lead to unexpected light. And I'd love to know, what country are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below.